that was those two clips. Now we're going into new product development. Going to talk about how firms make that go about. And I will start with an example. I'm going to talk about the Newton Message Pad. And this was an early entrant into the personal digital assistant market. It was exceptional in many aspects. It had an advanced chip for superior processing performance. It had object-oriented operating systems. It had an open license for the architecture to enable and encourage rapid and widespread adaptation by other vendors. The weight and size and battery life was better than many competitors, but it was too large to keep in a pocket, and the screen was too small to use for business people. And early problems with handwriting features made people think it was rubbish. So the Newton Message Pad was not a success on the market. But how should you think when you want your new product to be a success on the market then? Well, I can just give you a few bullet points. It will not make you a master in this, but you will have something to think about at least. For new product development, you need to try to maximize the fit with the customer requirement. And the Newton Message Pad had not, because they had not kind of talked perhaps with people and realized that, okay, but we want to be able to keep this in our pocket. So you need a clear sense of the desired feature. What do people want? Perhaps they don't know that themselves, but you need to understand it anyway. And you should not overestimate the willingness to pay. They might not be willing to pay a lot for something. And it can be difficult resolving heterogeneity in customer demands. Different client segments might want different things. Perhaps you then should target just one of these segments or make different versions for the different segments. Try to handle it somehow. Another tip is to minimize the development cycle time and try to build firm loyalty so that people stick with your thing and that you can kind of offer the new thing to them so they can stick with your brand. They don't have to go to someone else. And many development costs are directly related to time. And you want to fully amortize the fixed cost related to development before the generation of that product, that version of the product becomes obsolete. So you remember you had a lot of fixed cost in the beginning and you want to get that money back before you have to launch a new product. Okay, so it's good to be early on the market, and it's also good to quickly get feedback and to be able to upgrade your product, because you'll get customer feedback once you have launched your product. And try to be aware of quality, customer perception, and pressure on the development team, because firstly, you cannot launch something that has poor quality. Then your reputation will go down and people might not buy your next version, even though that is a lot better because they remember the first version. That is the customer perception. They will kind of think that, well, they develop rubbish things, I'm not going to buy that from them. And also be aware of the pressure on the development team. If there is a tight schedule and you want to launch the product quickly, then the development team might be stressed out. You cannot put too much pressure on them. You need to kind of help them out then if you want something to be ready to be launched at a certain time. In Schilling's book, she talks about sequential and partially parallel development. It's quite easy actually, these two concepts. Here's the sequential process. You start with some kind of opportunity identification, and then after that is done, you start with concept development. Once that is done, you start with product design. And when that is time, you start with process design. After that is done, you start with commercial production. And this would be time on the x-axis. Then, in partly parallel processes, you try to make this go quicker. So you have the same building blocks here, the same activities, but you see they are partly in parallel. Before the opportunity identification is done, you start with concept development. And before that is done, you start with product design. And before product design is done, you start with process design and then some commercial production. And it's important to involve people in the process when you develop something. And that is something that we're trying to illustrate by having a design thinking exercise in this course. In one of the workshops you will try design thinking, and then you involve someone in the process from the start, someone that we will call your client, someone that you are trying to solve a problem for. When you start a development process, it is important to involve people in that process, and not just any people. There are a few that are extra important. One suggestion is to involve project champions. And Schilling talks about champions, and she says that is senior members of the company that champion a new product development project. That could be a senior executive that have the power and authority to support and fight for a project. They can facilitate the allocation of human and capital resources to the development effort and ensure that the cycle time is not extended by research constraints, meaning that you don't meet your deadline because you do not have the right resources. They can also ensure that the project can sustain the necessary momentum to surmount the hurdles that inevitably will arise. So basically help you out and defend you against others within the organization. Other people to involve is the customers. We talked about that briefly when we talked about lead users, and we talked in the innovation lecture. The lead users, as you remember, are the people who experience the need of the population before the rest of the people, and they can serve as a forecasting laboratory and kind of a good way to try out your product or service before. You can use these people in focus groups, for instance, talking about what they experience and what their problem is, and let them try beta versions of the product. You can also involve suppliers in the development process, because you will probably need things from other firms, suppliers, and if you consult them early on, you might get very good advice, and they could be an alliance partner even when you develop this new thing. And they can contribute with ideas for product improvement, or have ideas for how you can increase the development's efficiency and make the development more efficient. They can also have good insights into how you will later put together this product. If they know that, okay, but you cannot base your development on that kind of material because that is a scarce resource. If you want to scale up, that would not be good. We suggest you find another option. So they could kind of help you look into the future and see how will this look in a larger scale. And finally, well, all relevant internal actors at your firm, manufacturing, how will you actually produce this? Do you have manufacturing in-house? Then it's wise to take them on in the development process, because they will have to start with some kind of process to manufacture whatever it is that you're developing. Talk with the legal people, because there might be aspects that you're missing if you don't consult them. Talk with marketing and the sales force, because if they already know what's going to happen, they might be kind of early in trying to market it. They might even start mentioning it to clients before that it is launched. I would like to mention one other tool for product development, and that is toll gates. Many development projects are governed in this way, and this picture, people who have studied product management recognize it. It's basically the plan for the project. You will start with having some kind of feasibility study where you make a rough plan. Okay, this is what it might look like if we do this. We say that before that we have tollgate 0. Then after that we have tollgate 1. And here there are some people, it could be the product owner and steering committee, who meet and say, okay, this is good enough, we're going to proceed with planning. Or no, this is not good enough, you have to continue and redo things. Or no, we're going to terminate this project altogether. That's kind of the decisions that they make in the toll gates. A go, no-go decision. That is made in all the toll gates in the process. Here you have milestones that you might have internally in the project. If the feasibility is good to go, it passes the toll gate 1, then you go into planning the project. You might have a few milestones there as well. After the planning is done, you go to the steering committee and you have this meeting again, and the go, no-go decision is made. If it is a go, you go into the execution phase. And you have some milestones here, and this is probably the longest duration of the project. After that is done, you go into tollgate 3. Go, no go. If it is a go, you go into the closure phase, where you hand over whatever it is, perhaps to the sales personnel or someone else who's going to take on after you leave the project, after the project has ended. If that is going okay, you will pass this last tollgate and the project will end. So this is the tollgate model. There are other ways to organize projects, and we're going to watch a small clip about that. That is the Scrum. You've heard of that, many of you, but now I want you to watch a small clip about Scrum, so you get kind of a general feel for what that is and how you organize projects according to the Scrum principle. It's an agile method.